So to start off with, let's start with a couple of quotes, one from the New Testament era and one from the completed Testament era. So we are all familiar with St. Paul encouraging the Romans, in this case, the disciples in Rome, that is, to put your mind on God, because by doing so, you're going to clear up a lot of faulty ideas in your own life. Dennis Waitley, current motivational speaker, our limitations and success will be based most often on your own expectations for ourselves. What the mind dwells upon, the body acts upon. So what are these self-limiting beliefs? I'm sure we're all aware of the inner demons inside ourselves that ruin us when we make a pledge to do something. We decide, I'm going to do this. And then this voice inside of us says, you can't do that. You don't have the ability. You don't have the knowledge. You don't have the skill. Look at you. You're nothing. You're nobody. It can get really brutal. It can get a lot worse than that. But I'm sure we're all aware of these self-limiting beliefs. And when I say beliefs, I mean things that come out of the subconscious, like demons from the deep, like demons from the swamp, and wrap themselves around your ankles and start dragging you down into the pit of self-destruction and self-pity. So these are this mire, this swamp is your subconscious. It's an area of your life that you really don't have a good handle on. And yet, the subconscious is the basis upon which we operate our life. So it's a very important thing to be aware of your self-limiting beliefs. Do you really know what you believe in? Most people think they do, but psychologists seriously doubt that. Most people have no idea what they believe in and or why they believe it. Most of the time we're just operating with some kind of vague sense of not knowing what we believe in. And yet when something happens, when some kind of crisis emerges, and we react to that crisis, many times that helps us to understand what we actually do believe in. But hopefully we don't have to have those crises in our lives in order for us to become more aware of ourselves. What we need to do is we need to understand, we need to take a step back and think about what life would have been like in an ideal environment. Imagine yourself growing up in an environment with mature parents who are able to bestow upon you a deep, rich sense of love, a sense of belonging, a sense of value, a sense of purposefulness. You get the idea. And then compare that environment to your own upbringing. I remember hearing the testimony of one speaker a couple of days ago, and he was saying this to his dad, like, when you raised me, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, and I felt like I was always motivated to be successful to the point where it was driving me mad because it was the only way to please you. And the dad is driving and he says, son, every parent screws up their kid. But you didn't do too bad. You just moved on. And I think the reality is, that's true. We all screw up our kids. We've all been screwed up. And we all do our best not to screw up our kids, but we end up doing it anyway. The point is, there is a statute of limitations. We've got to hand in our victim card at some point. We've got to say, okay, now it's my responsibility to take it from here. Maybe it was my parents' fault that I was screwed up as a teenager, but, I'm 49 years old now. There's a cutoff point. I mean, where is the cutoff point? in everyone's life, it's different. You know, some kids at a very young age, they look around their family structure and they go, you know what, I'm out of here. At the first available opportunity, I'm out of here and I'm going to create a life of my own. And for some of us, it's like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, and plodding along. But at some point, we need to have that awakening moment where we realize my life is in my hands, and it's up to me to do what I need to do to take care of it, to guide it, direct it, do whatever I need to do in order to get to a certain goal. And our happiness is only going to be contingent upon whether or not we see ourselves getting towards that goal. So in order to be happy, we have to have some kind of purpose. We have to have some kind of goal, some kind of future like destiny that we want to arrive at, emotionally, spiritually, on a family level, financially, etc. And only when we see ourselves progressing towards that future goal, that future vision of ourselves, are we going to experience this thing called happiness. So, we got screwed up. Okay, that's our reality. At some point in our life, we were disappointed. We were not supported. We were discouraged. Our heart was broken. And we absorbed those ideas. Ideas, in fact, that other people had handed down to them. And we absorbed them. Now, when we're born free of ideas. We don't have any opinions about things. We don't have any beliefs about anything. So every belief that we have, every opinion that we have, it was handed down to us at some level. And then we either built it or rejected it or did something with it. So if we have, or if we discover within ourselves a belief system that is limiting our spiritual growth, in other words, stopping us from growing up, then we have to tackle it. We have to address it. So try this experiment. Try hunching your shoulders forward and leaning forward in your chair. And drooping your shoulders forward with your head down and say to yourself, I am powerful.
I am powerful.
You can't even say it, some of you. That's how powerless that posture makes us feel. Try this on the other hand. Sit back, shoulders straight. Look the world squarely in the eye and say, I am powerful.
I am powerful.
What a difference. What a difference. And this is well documented in the book, The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, that our beliefs act upon our physiology. They're actually affecting us on a cellular biological level. So in order to get to our subconscious, in order to get to it, we can either go through, we've tried all kinds of things historically. We've tried the couch therapy, we've tried shock therapy, but we can also go to our subconscious through our physical as well, by changing our physical situation, changing our physical environment, changing the people, switching out the people that we hang out with that are having a negative impact on our mentality. We can go to our subconscious and start to rearrange the wiring there. So that's what we need to do. Since our thoughts, in other words, the ones that we entertain, because let's be honest, if we imagine ourselves, our mind, our body is on the earth, but our mind is floating in this plasma of thoughts. And some thoughts drift in, and you go, what the heck? And those are the thoughts you just have to kind of let drift out as quickly as possible. Don't reciprocate with those thoughts. Don't entertain those thoughts. But the thoughts that you really have an identity with, those are the ones that are going to create your future. So think about what kind of thoughts are you having, and what kind of future you will have is pretty much in sync with the thoughts that you're having and the thoughts that you're entertaining. So anything you've learned up to this point in our life, you can unlearn as well. Think about what is the story that you tell yourself. That's your history. That's your kind of makeup. And stories can change. You could be going along in a marriage and everything seems fine, and then suddenly you find out that your husband has been having an affair. And then all of a sudden, your backstory, the story of you loving each other and marrying and having kids, all of a sudden that story has a completely different meaning. It has a dark undertone. And you think, okay, all the while during that time, what was really going on? I thought I knew the story. But now I look back on that story and I have a whole different perspective and meaning and view of that story. So what is the story that you tell yourself? And it's not necessarily the truth because you don't know all the facts. But you have a meaning attached to your story. What is that meaning? How did you come to be where you're at today? That is something that we need to look at more closely. So, here are some quotes from our founder regarding the associations of our mind. Being true is not limited to individuals. It applies even beyond the whole and seeks to make connection of value. Since trueness is liked and sought after by everyone, it must be everywhere. So becoming a true person is our goal. Your body is limited. It cannot go beyond the limits of the earth, but the vertical world can grow bigger without any limit. And here are what others have said about self-limiting beliefs. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but please go ahead and do so while I'm yabbering on up here. But the one I like the most out of these is the one at the bottom by Les Brown. Life has no limitations except the ones you make. And I would add to that the ones that you inherited, the ones that you hold on to. Those are the limitations of your life. So in conclusion, we are damaged goods. We should accept this fact. Religions have understood this for eons, and the purpose of religion has been for us to reconnect ourselves with the source of our value, with the epicenter of what gives us value. Because without a connection to the source, to God, to Yahweh, to Jehovah, to whoever you want to call that being, the creator, the heavenly parents, without that connection, you have no value. You can't make up your own value. You can't determine your own value. So that is essential for us in our path of fixing ourselves or path of restoration. We need to know God. We need to have a connection with God. And it needs to be a habit that we connect with on a daily basis. So do we have a daily meditation period? A time reserved for connecting with your kids? Do you have a time connecting to your spouse? Do you have a time connecting with yourself? Do you have a time connecting to your job? Most of us do. We have a connection with our job, but not really a connection time set out for our spouse or our children or our God. We don't seem to value those connections as much as we do with the activity of making money and supporting ourselves physically. What about the spiritual and the mental and the emotional support that we also need just as much as the physical, material support? We need to stop distracting ourselves from what's really important. We're here on this earth not to make a whole bunch of money and then die and leave all of it behind. We're here on this earth for a much deeper, greater purpose. We need to reconnect with that and expand that, because I believe that we have a tendency, or at least I can only speak for myself here, but I have a tendency to lose track of what's really important in my life. My kids, my wife, my God, my spiritual sustenance, these are all really important things. But the value I place on my job is I spend most of my day working. So, we need to to remedy our self-limiting beliefs is reconnect with our Heavenly Parent. We also need to lean into our fears. Many people have said things about fear. And here's something that Georgia O'Keeffe, the famous artist, said. "I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I've never let it keep me from doing a single thing that I wanted to do." Here's what Edward Rickenbacker, famous World War I pilot, said. "Courage is doing what you are afraid to do. There can be no courage unless you are scared. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage." Because courage is what we need in order to challenge our self-limiting beliefs. Courage is something that, without courage, we can't move forward. We can't understand our potential. There's a poem by Peter McWilliams that goes, "Come to the edge," he said. "They said, we are afraid. Come to the edge," he said. They came. He pushed them, and they flew. We have to face our fear in order to understand our potential, in order to release it. Fear is what keeps us trapped in our limited potential. When you are a parent and you look at your child and you see all their potential and you see them wasting it, it is heartbreaking. It is very disappointing. In the same way, we have all this potential as adults still locked up inside of us for the most part. And our Creator is looking at us, I'm sure, in the same way that a parent looks at their kids saying, "What are you doing? I endowed you with so much potential. Oh my God, please realize it." So, this is our predicament. We are damaged goods. We need to understand that. And we need to understand that we are also so much potential inside of us, but it needs to be operated on. It needs fixing. It needs redirecting. It needs work. And it needs courage on our part to face up to those dark shadows that lurk within us. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us life, giving us truth, giving us purpose, giving us responsibility so that we can make this life that we have. But we also know that coming with responsibility is also the threat of failure, of damage, of not participating in life the way you had intended for us to participate in life. Help us to have the courage to live out those inner yearnings that we sometimes dampen down and sometimes are in touch with but are too afraid to act on. Help us to understand, to differentiate good and evil, but at the same time to act upon the good desires that are welling up inside of us but are not being acted on because of our fear of failure, fear of what other people will think of us, fear of not accomplishing, fear of this, fear of that. So many fears that keep us trapped inside ourselves. Help us to overcome. Help us to have the courage, to find the courage, and to exercise that courage like a muscle so it can become strong again in our lives. Thank you so much, and we offer this prayer through Christ our Lord, our Jew and Amen.